Hi everyone, welcome back to Mad About Cards and Crafts and another Brutus Monroe Design Team project. Today I am thrilled, honored, excited to be participating in STAMPtember. This is the Brutus Monroe Simon Says Stamp collaboration stamp set. This comes with 3 separate candied apples, 1 snowman, 1 fall caramel apple, and 1 mummy apple, several sentiments, some sticks, some accessories. We have spooky, you're a treat, happy Halloween, you're the pick of the orchard, you're the caramel to my apple, welcome fall, happy holidays, there's snow unlike you, joy, holiday wishes, and snowman kisses. I squealed, literally squealed when this arrived in the mail. I think this is going to sell out very fast. Once it's gone, it's gone. So if you are interested in this stamp set, I would recommend that you head over to Simon Says Stamp now and make your purchase. There are coordinating dies. I did not receive the coordinating dies, so I did cut the images out myself. I'm starting by stamping onto the Brutus Monroe alcohol blend paper using Raven ink. I'm going to do a little bit of heat embossing with some clear embossing powder because I want these images to really pop. The Raven ink is a beautiful deep black ink. Adding that clear embossing powder just really adds that extra pop to the image. I will color these off screen and I will try to walk you through what colors approximately that I used. I didn't write them down and I apologize, but I pretty much know most of what I used. I'm going to stamp some additional images. I do not end up using that tag, but I did stamp a couple more of the little candy apple sticks. This set is so adorable. It is going to just bring so much joy into my stamping world. Here I have some Forest Moss Distress ink. I have a piece of white cardstock and I spritzed that Forest Moss with some of the Brutus Monroe Pearl Chroma Mist. That's going to give a little bit of sparkle and shine, and I did some ink smushing as you saw. I have a piece of vellum cardstock. I'm going to use my anti-static tool because I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment at the very bottom of this. There are lots of layers on this card. So I am using the clear embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and I'm also going to be using the Gilded embossing powder. The sentiment is going to read, there is no one like you. And the first layer, which was the ink smushed layer, that one is about 3 1/4 inches tall by 2.5 inches wide. This second layer of vellum is about 4 inches by 3 1/4 inches, so 4 inches tall by 3 1/4 inches wide. And then I'm going to come in with some cardstock that is from Brutus Monroe. It's actually some patterned paper, and I think it's from the pumpkin patch, and that one is going to be cut to 4 by 5 1/4. One of my favorite things to do is to use my Tombow Starry gold watercolor paints. I am going all around the edges of all of my layers except for my top folding card base. So I went around the layer that was ink smushed, I went around the layer of vellum, and then finally you're going to see the patterned paper, this beautiful Christmas plaid from Brutus Monroe, and I'll go all around the edges of that with that same Gilded watercolor. Once I start building up my card, this is going to be a top folding A2 size card, and that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I wanted to add a little bit more splatter to this ink smushed panel. This is what's going to ground my snowman. For my snowman, I did color him using, I believe, a B00 and a B01 marker around where the little drips of snow are. And here is where I'm centering everything. So I'm adding a little bit of that art glitter glue, centering that ink smushed panel onto the vellum. I'll add my pattern paper to my card base, and then I will add these 2 layers using that same art glitter glue. back to the snowman, I did use some neutral colors to color his hat. So I used neutral 7, 5, and 3. For the ribbon on his hat, I did use an E59 and an E29 and 27. We're going to start putting our little snowmen together. As you can see, I did add a little bit of glossy accents because I do love more sparkle and shine, and I wanted to add it to where those little drips were on the snowman to give him even more interest. And this is Crystal Stickles. So just around those little areas. I do end up off screen going over the eyes with Crystal Morning Dew Drops from Nuvo. And that's going to give those eyes that little glossy shine. Here I'm adding that little bit of a leaf. I had some more of a white edge in the center where the two leaves come together, and so I just was trimming that little bit off. I'm going to glue this down. I'll add my apple stick, and then I'm going to add some foam tape. So I do add foam tape to the back of the stick, the back of the snowman, as well as to the back of the leaf. And once I finish with that and lay this down, this is card number 1. So for the sake of time, as I said, I did color the second image off camera as well. For this second image, I went ahead and I colored my candy apple using my E24, 27, 29, and then you're going to see that I have a really deep shadow where the caramel is, and that's going to be an E59. And then I colored my caramel using E23, 25. And finally, I did, as you can see, I am using a stencil from my stash. This background is 6 by 3, and I am just layering the colors. I am overlaying some of them, so I'm blending some of that fossilized amber over the crackling campfire as well as the gathered twigs. Once I pull the stencil off, I think that it's still just a little bit too light because I want this to really feel like a fall card, and so I'm going to go ahead and go all around the edges using that gathered twigs, using my blending brush, and then I'll start building my card. I have some crackling campfire here. This is a second layer. It is cut to 3 1/8 by 6 1/8. And again, I'm just adding that crackling campfire around the edges. I die cut this little banner, and I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment that says "You are the pick of the orchard" using the same clear embossing ink as well as the Gilded embossing powder. I'll use my gathered twigs, what's left on my brush, to tone down that white. I'll add some foam tape to the back of the candied apple, and then I will add the bow and the stick, pop those up, and add them to my card. There are some leaves. I don't know what happened to the footage, so I do apologize, but there are some leaves from a stamp set that Brutus Monroe recently released, and the stamp set is called Seasonal Wreaths. And so I did stamp out those little leaves, and I did pop those up after coloring them onto some foam, and I added them around the card. So at the end, you're going to see a close-up of this card, and it will have the addition of the leaves. Again, I must not have hit record, and I do apologize for that. So here's that little stick. You can see I've added the foam tape. Once I get this down, I'm going to add foam tape to the back of the sentiment, and then I'll add my bow, and then we're going to mount this onto a finished card base that's going to be side folding, and it's going to be 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. That will be the finished card size for my mini slimline. My third card is going to be a slimline, a full-size slimline. Here I'm adding the Morning Dew from Nuvo all around that caramel apple. I wanted to make sure that that caramel was bright and shiny because, you know, caramel, when you get it, it does have that sheen to it. And so I thought that I really needed to have that on this card. I set it aside to dry, and now we're going to start working on card number 2, or card number 3. For card number 3, I do have a stencil from Brutus Monroe. I believe it's called Falling Stars. I have some Velveteen glaze. in Banana, and I am going to add it so that I get a little bit of texture onto this 8.5 by 3.5 inch card panel. I did set that aside to dry, and I came back to it about 45 minutes later because I needed to add this layer of the stars. I wanted it to go all the way across. You see, I do add some of the bigger stars, which this stencil has a wonderful array of star sizes on it. So I wanted to make sure I got those larger stars. I'm going to set that aside to dry for just a little bit. Here is the one little mummy candied apple that I do end up coloring. I'm using, as you can see on the screen, RV9 as my darkest color. That's going to do my shading. I'll add in an RV6, and then I'll blend that out with an RV0 or RV4. That is going to be my highlight color. I went with really bright colors. I thought that I was going to go with more of a night sky background, which is what I ended up doing. You saw that Banana Velveteen glaze is really bright. That is going to tone down quite a bit. I've showed in another video that the Velveteen glaze will take some of the ink from when I distress over it, and so it will tone those down quite a bit. In fact, the yellow shows through just in a faint amount. I wanted to color their teeth with gray markers, so I used a C0 as well as a C02. And then you see that I did color in that center of that mummy. You saw that I missed that. Here I'm adding those bloodshot eyes with an R24. That's going to give him that spooky look. And I decided that I wanted this apple, because of the colors that I used, I wanted it to be green. So for the green apple, I used a YG7, YG5, and a YG3. I did stamp out the top portion of the fall apple, so the one that had the caramel on it. I only stamped the apple portion out, and I cut away any of the caramel that's stamped because I'm going to add it to the top of these mummies. I wanted that apple to show on these little mummies. I didn't want just the cloth. So here are those cutout areas. Again, I colored them off screen. I'm going to add them on. You saw that to the eyes. I did add that same Nouveau Morning Dew to get that gloss on the eyes. And then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of these. But first we need to go back and finish our panel. I thought I would do some ink smushing, and so I started off with Chroma Mist. This is from Brutus Monroe in Cobalt Blue and shaded Lilac or Soft Lilac. I'll have it linked. All the Brutus Monroe products, as well as the link to this stamp and die set over in the Simon Says Stamp store, will be linked in the description box below. I spritzed it with a little bit of water. I thought I wanted to do some smushing again, but I'm going to go full on in with the sprays. So here I'm spraying it directly. I'm adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to dab a little bit of that up. I'm going to set it aside after I heat dry it, and then, because I don't dry it all the way, for this one I decided not to. I'm going to wipe away some of the stars, try to get some of that yellow back, and then I have this stencil from my stash. This is something that I made, and I just spritzed the panel with water because those sprays are water reactive, and I lifted up some of the ink to get that spider pattern. To bring in that night sky, I went around 3 sides of that panel, and then I cut it out using a die from my stash. And now I'm going around the inside panel, which is going to be inlaid, and I did add that black soot distress ink on all 4 sides there. Here I've added some Chroma Mist in white because of course we need more layers of color. And this is some gauze that I had in my stash. So this is something old that I found in an old first aid kit, and I went ahead and I just tore part of that apart. I'm spritzing it with some green leaf Chroma Mist and I'm going to set that aside to dry. This is the frame that we cut out using that die. And I did add some foam tape to the back of it to pop it up, and I'm going to inlay that panel. Once I inlay that panel for those sticks, I'm not going to need any of the foam tape on the back of that because it would just be a little bit wonky because my frame is popped up and the top of those sticks are going to touch that portion of the frame. I'm going to add all 3 of my apples. As you can see, I do have the foam tape on the back of it, but I don't have any room for a sentiment. So I thought that I would go ahead and cut another piece of white cardstock about 1/4 inch smaller. As I may have mentioned, this finished card size is going to be 3 3/4 by 8 3/4 inches. So I cut the inside white panel to 8.5 by 3.5. I'm going to stamp with the Raven ink the sentiment that says Happy Halloween. And those are my 3 cards featuring the collaboration between Simon Says Stamp and Brutus Monroe. As I mentioned, there is the stamp set that is available, or you can purchase the stamps and dies. They will be linked in the description box below, along with all of the products that are available over in the Brutus Monroe store. I want to thank you for spending time with me. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd love for you to subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified whenever I do upload a video. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.